Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the NoDQ.com live recap of AEW Dynamite for September the 15th, 2021, Newark, New Jersey. AEW finally arrives in New Jersey. The original show was booked, I believe, March 25th, somewhere around there, 2020. Of course, COVID happened and the show got delayed, I believe, more than once, and then they finally got it done here, September 15th, 2021. Sold out crowd, one of the biggest crowds in AEW, I think the third biggest up to this point, or maybe even the second biggest crowd. United Center, actually I think third biggest after United Center, and then the first Dynamite in Washington, D.C. So anyways, hot crowd as you would expect from Dynamite, especially with a large crowd like we had here. I think they announced 13,000, something like that. We had CM Punk come down to the ring, not afraid of COVID. He did his stage dive again. He hugged a Dusty Rhodes cosplayer at ringside, and then he took his place at the commentary desk as advertised. We kicked off the show with the in-ring debut in AEW of Adam Cole, baby. Adam Cole one-on-one with Frankie Kazarian. Crowd went absolutely bonkers for Adam Cole. He was the shit in Newark, New Jersey. Let's just say that. They absolutely thought this guy was the shit. Kazarian did some innovative submission, but then Cole went for the sweet chin music. However, Kazarian countered that with a German suplex, but Kazarian could not get the job done. Adam Cole picked up the win with the Panama Sunrise and then the last shot, scoring the 1-2-3 victory in his debut. No shock here or anything. After the match was over, Adam Cole cut a promo and he said it's story time with Adam Cole, baby. He said that there are three guys under his skin: Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy. And he officially challenged those three to a six-man tag team match coming up on the special Grand Slam edition of Rampage. AEW next week is the big show in New York City at Arthur Ashe Stadium. They are going to do two tapings, AEW Dynamite and AEW Rampage, and Rampage is going to be a 2-hour show next week. It's going to go to midnight. I'm going to have 4 hours of wrestling on Friday night. It's going to be crazy. And they got a stacked card for Rampage on that night, so I might have to do a very late recap video of both SmackDown and Rampage. But yeah, good promo here from Adam Cole. Looking forward to the six-man match. He'll be teaming up with the Young Bucks, of course. The Super Clique, as they're known as, will be back together. And Boneless Chicken Wing says, if it wasn't your job, you wouldn't watch wrestling. That's not true. I would still watch the YouTube clips. Would AEW have gotten me back into wrestling? Maybe, to some degree, but I might watch AEW live if this wasn't my job. Definitely not Raw. I always say that. There's no chance in hell I would be watching Raw live. Maybe not even SmackDown, quite frankly. As much as I do like SmackDown, I'll tell you, watching NXT clips the last several weeks, it's a lot easier to get through than watching a 2-hour show. Oofman Entertainment sent in a $10 super chat. He says, coming to you from the Prudential Center in New Jersey. He says, Dynamite just ended and Rampage is about to start. Jersey brought it tonight. Cannot wait for AEW to come back. We'll try to listen in tonight to you. Well, I appreciate that, Oofman. And if you can, send me spoilers so I can post it on ODQ.com and everybody can complain. But seriously, anybody at the show in New Jersey, please send me spoilers. NoDQMISC@gmail.com. All right, so let's get to it. We had our man, MJF, one of the best heels in wrestling today, coming to the ring, and he was brutal with his promo on Bryan Pillman Jr. He called him Crying Bryan, said New Jersey is the armpit of America. He said how bad the sports teams are and they suck just as bad as Jersey Shore skanks. Story probably checks out. And he said he is going to have a convo with the late Bryan Pillman. He started looking above into the heavens, but then realized Bryan's actually down there in hell. Kind of reminded me of that infamous Randy Orton promo on Eddie Guerrero. So I remember people criticized that promo. I don't know if people are going to have the same energy. My thought process on both the Randy Orton promo and this one, if the family, if Pillman Jr. was cool with it, then I guess it's fine. You know, if they're doing it to draw money, then more power to them. And with MJF calling Bryan's mom Methany, you know, it's hitting real life, that's for sure. But again, if Bryan Pillman Jr. is okay with this and it's giving him a push on television and he's okay with it, then again, more power to him. But yeah, this was quite the heel promo from MJF, I must say. He said that Methany created the worst excuse for a second-generation wrestler. Crowd very much was shocked by that line. Pillman finally arrived. Wardlow went up to the stage to cut him off, but Pillman's music hit. Pillman actually went through the crowd. He got in the ring, and then Wardlow ran back in. Pillman slapped Wardlow. Pillman sidestepped Wardlow. Wardlow went over the top rope, and then Pillman grabbed the chair and held them back. They also showed a sit-down interview between Jim Ross and Pillman. Pillman said like he felt that he let his father down, and him and MJF are not the same. He had a rough upbringing. He made something out of himself, but it was tough for him. And he said that coming up on Dynamite, MJF will not be stepping in the ring with any person. It's going to be a Pillman, and that's going to be trouble for him. I'm actually hoping MJF puts over Pillman, you know, for all the trash talking and stuff. Like, this would be the biggest win of Pillman's career and would really elevate him if he gets this win over MJF. You know, I've been saying this for a while. Pillman and Griff Garrison, you know, they win the matches on Dark, and that's all fine and dandy. But I feel like neither of them have picked up a really significant win on TV yet. And I don't really think it would hurt MJF to lose a match against Pillman Jr. It would elevate Pillman Jr. big time. So I'm kind of hoping we get an upset victory next week on Dynamite to really put Pillman Jr. on the map, especially with all the stuff that MJF has been saying about his mom and his dad. Like, you know, you want to see Pillman get a big win that can take his career to the next level. Caleb Jacobs thinks maybe Wardlow will turn against MJF. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but of course that could eventually be a storyline with Wardlow going off on his own. And Anthony says as long as it's making both of them money, the only thing that matters. And, you know, that's always been the mentality with wrestlers, that if you're working, if you're making money, then you say whatever it takes to get the heat. And, you know, it's when you start talking about somebody and you're not in a storyline with them that it's crossing the line. Kind of like when Scott Steiner went on Nitro and started shooting on Ric Flair even though they were not in a program together, and he got suspended for that one. We had Christian and the Jurassic Express backstage accepting the challenge for Rampage, and Christian threw a little NXT dig at Cole, saying that Cole was finally with the EVP's money. They got Cole out of the developmental league, and then said that Cole is used to losing on Wednesday nights, and now he'll lose on Friday nights as well. Ouch, that was pretty brutal. We had FTR up against Matt Sydal and Dante Martin. Decent match here. Dante was worked over. They grounded him because he's the high flyer, but eventually Dante tagged out. Him and Seidel worked together. They did some dives onto FTR, but then FTR regained control. Dante tagged out again, or actually Seidel tagged Dante back in. Dante came in, did some moves, but then got hit with the big rig. FTR picked up the victory, and this was building up something else, which we'll get to here in a few minutes. We had a video package. I guess there's going to be a tag team match coming up. Lance Archer and Suzuki going up against Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And they talked about how Suzuki had an unfair advantage last week in Moxley's hometown of Cincinnati. So they're going to do the tag team match in New York City. We had Malachi Black show up with one of the coolest entrances in wrestling today. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I absolutely love the screaming. I think it just gives him this really creepy vibe. It's like a horror movie, like a torture chamber. So I really enjoy the entrance, and it works really well for him. Almost better than his WWE entrance with the rising from the coffin. Like they really went all out, to use an AEW term, with this entrance. And Black said that there was a problem. There was a person wearing a Cody jacket at ringside who turned out to be actress Rosario Dawson. And Cody Rhodes came down through the crowd. Dawson jumped on Black's back, and then Cody attacked Black. Huge fight broke out. They went into the crowd, and this was to set up their match, which is on next week's Dynamite. We had a quick backstage segment with the Dark Order. They were backstage arguing. Evil Uno is kind of having an attitude now, and they don't like it. The other guys are upset with him. MVP Kev says he loves Malachi Black's entrance. We then had a very interesting segment, and I'm really curious about everyone's thoughts on this one, because I definitely saw some different opinions about this one on social media. Jeff Meacham Network sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Says, are Tully's guys still with MJF? Wasn't really clear. Yeah, I'm not sure at this point. It feels like Tully and FTR are doing their own thing, and MJF is with Wardlow, and same thing with the Inner Circle. Jericho and Hager are still together, but feels like Santana and Ortiz are kind of doing their own thing now, and you got Sammy Guevara doing his own thing. So it feels like both of those groups have kind of quietly split up, not officially, but they're just not doing stuff. Maybe they will at some point, but for now it doesn't seem like they're officially a group at the moment. So we had Dan Lambert with the America Top Team, the UFC fighters, and he was doing the usual promo about the AEW fans, saying they love to watch the 150-pound, 5'8" wrestlers doing all these crazy things just for the guy to kick out at 2. Said the morons go crazy for it. That's when Jericho and Hager interrupted, and Dan Lambert said to turn this shit off. And the crowd sang Judas anyways. Jericho said he has a song for Dan Lambert, which is called I'm a Fat-Faced Dipshit, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he got the crowd to chant that. Jericho said they cannot be intimidated. They are ready to fight. Lambert said it's not going to happen in this shithole of New Jersey. By the way, all of the shits were said during AEW Dynamite, except for earlier when I said that the fans thought Adam Cole was the shit. But yeah, a lot of shit bombs were dropped on this show. And Lambert said that they would do the match next week in New York City. Kind of funny to me because Newark, New Jersey is what, like an hour from Queens? I'm not sure the exact driving time, maybe longer with traffic, but they're not exactly that far apart. Newark is like a suburb of New York City. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that they rip on Newark. It's like it's the equivalent to insulting the city of Anaheim, California, and then you say, well, we're going to go to Los Angeles, where, that's a first-class city, not a shithole like Anaheim, California. When it's like an hour apart, it's all greater Los Angeles. Anyways, TD Hang with a $2 super chat says, hey, Aaron, new viewer, love your channel. Well, thank you very much for that, TD. I really appreciate you coming in and checking out the videos. I hope you stick around for more. CC Drink says, I like Dan Lambert because he was telling the truth because AEW doesn't sell in their matches. Well, that's not good because AEW was supposed to have the heels be villains and not tell the truth. I mean, that's for anybody in wrestling in general. So let's see. What did you guys think about this segment? I mean, Biblical Adrian says this fits better if it was Jim Cornette. Man, I wish they'd bring Jim Cornette in and let him play the anti-AEW character. I would be very entertained by that. I know that Virtue probably loved this segment because he is on Dan Lambert's nuts. He thinks Dan Lambert is the shit. And I like him, but his act kind of gets old after a while, in my opinion. This was an interesting segment, but I think they kind of overdid it with the shits. When you say it one time, it's like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But then when every other line is shit, I'm like, okay, got anything else? So anyways, Jericho accepted the match. No Escape from New York next week. And then we had a video from the Gun Club, Billy Gunn and his sons. And they brought up the win-losses, how they never lose, yet they are disrespected. And they haven't gotten the opportunities. And I'm like, well, all your guys' matches are on Dark, so nobody really cares. But, they're pissed off and they want some respect, and that's why they attacked Paul White. We had Jade Cargill versus Layla Hirsch in the AEW women's match of the evening, a little bit earlier than usual, around 9 o'clock. And Layla had a pretty good showing. She did a dive to Smart Mark. And Arco said you missed the Lesnar and Goldberg reference. Oh, yeah, Jericho said that he gotten a couple of backstage fights. I think he said Bill, a guy who does MMA-style fighting. Goldberg has all the MMA stuff that he does. And, of course, Brock Lesnar. Anyways, back to the women's match. Layla missed a moonsault, and then Jade hit the big boot, followed by the Jaded. She picked up the win. We then had Taz with Hook showing up at the commentary desk, getting in CM Punk's face, and that's when Will Hobbs attacked CM Punk from behind. And I was like, oh shit. Hook got the Dragon Sleeper on, and then Hobbs chokeslammed CM Punk on the announce table, but it was the table, it did not break. And that had to be a shitty time for CM Punk when the table doesn't break. Your first table bump in 7+ years and it doesn't break. So that set up the match for Rampage. CM Punk versus Will Powerhouse Hobbs. That will be on next Friday's Dynamite. Or no, Rampage. They got a loaded card for that Arthur Ashe Stadium show between Rampage and Dynamite. It's a stacked card, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute here. We had Shawn Spears in a little video package admitting that he is a generic piece of shit. But that generic piece of shit gave Darby Allin his very first loss in AEW. They showed the footage. I think it was Fight for the Fallen from 2019. And then they had a singles match. Spears was mocking Sting. Spears, a shitty move he did here. He rubbed the face paint off of Darby Allin with the towel. What a shithead that generic piece of shit is Shawn Spears. Anyways, Darby Allin made a comeback. Spears was laid out on the steel steps that were on the outside of the ring, and Allin did a dive to the outside onto the steps. And then Allen finished off Spears with the coffin drop. After the match was over, FTR, a couple of other shitheads, they got in the ring, confronted Darby and Sting. A big fight broke out. Tully tried to use the chair, and that alone gave FTR the upper hand. They then hit a spike pile driver to Sting. Yes, Sting took a spike pile driver from FTR, and then another shitty thing to do, they wiped off Sting's face paint. Wow, shit. Not good for Sting to be humiliated like that, but he's got his chance for payback coming up on Dynamite. I believe it's Dynamite, the Sting match. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. We had Tony Schiavone with Bryan Danielson in the ring. Before Bryan could really say anything, we had Don Callis and Kenny Omega interrupting. And Callis was ripping into Danielson, questioning his motives and saying, and people call me a carny piece of shit. And that's exactly what he said. I wasn't throwing that shit in there. Jeff Meacham with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Says, okay, Rift, the cussing is just for shits and giggles at this point. Yes, it is for the shits and giggles. Thank you for that, Jeff. And back to the promo. Crowd was chanting piece of shit at Don Callis. Again, not from me. That's what the crowd actually said. And then Callis channeling his inner virtue, saying that maybe Bryan is just a mark like all of the people. Bryan told Callis to shut up and said that he's there to talk to Omega. He said one day it'll be about the world title, but for now, he just wants to give what the people want. Not a hug, but a match. Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. And Callis was like, no. And then Bryan responded by saying, shut up, you piece of shit. And he had so much joy when he said that. Crowd popped big, of course, for the 500th shit line of the evening. Omega was continued to just stand there, and he wasn't doing anything. So Bryan said that Omega just lets that piece of shit Callis talk for him. And that's when Omega started to pay attention here, started to get a little fired up. And then Bryan said that he thinks Omega has lost his balls. We had a balls line on this show. Little change of pace from the shit. And then Bryan said, what's it going to be, yes or no? Crowd did the yes chant, and Omega accepted the challenge for next week, Arthur Ashe Stadium, AEW Dynamite. AEW chants in the arena. So yes, Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega next week in New York City. I think it's the right call. I know some people are like they should save it for pay-per-view, but my thought process is this is their biggest crowd of all time, 18,000 plus. New York City, the biggest market in the country. A lot of publicity for this show being in New York City. I think you want to do the biggest match possible on this show in New York, in the biggest market in the country, biggest crowd to date. Makes sense for me. I would do this. I think it's the right call to do their first match on TV in New York City. And of course, you can do the title match down the line. Kind of reminds me of Roddy Piper versus Hollywood Hogan. When Piper came in, their first match was non-title. It wasn't about titles. It was personal. And then later, Piper got a title opportunity. So it'll probably be something similar to that. Maybe Bryan wins, and then eventually, maybe Full Gear gets a title match against Omega. But what about Adam Page? When's he's coming back? When's he gonna get his opportunity? Maybe Bryan puts over Omega, and then Adam Page finally is the one to beat Omega for the title. So we had one more segment after that. We had Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston up against 2.0. And again, I say this every week, it seems. These guys have had quite the run considering that they were barely on television in NXT, and now they're in major storylines in AEW, and they main evented Dynamite. They jumped Moxley and Kingston from behind, worked over Moxley for a while. Eddie Kingston got the hot tag, did the machine gun chops, did some suplexes, and then Moxley tagged back in. They double teamed Parker. Moxley pinned Parker. No surprise there. And then Suzuki arrived. And I guess there was this controversy that his full entrance wasn't played on Dynamite last week. So this week, they did the full entrance for him. And, it's fine. Don't see what all the fuss is about, but, people like it. He had his full entrance, and he brawled with Moxley. They fought on the table. We saw a table bump earlier. Moxley used the microphone on Suzuki's bad eye, and then they fought in the crowd. Saw that earlier with Cody and Malachi Black. So, overall, good Dynamite. I think some stuff was a bit excessive, like the shit lines and, brawling in the crowd they did twice on one show. But all in all, it was a fun 2 hours. A lot of it was building up to next week and Rampage. Those are going to be really top-tier shows for AEW. Gabe with a $2 super chat says, I think Aaron is just shitting all over this shit. Well, I thought this show was pretty good. I do not think it was a shitty show. I do think it was a good show. So I'm going with a solid B for this week's Dynamite. I think I might have enjoyed NXT a little bit more, but I think that was probably the novelty of NXT and the fact that it was something different. But I did get a lot of enjoyment out of NXT, and I enjoyed Dynamite too, but this was more about build-up for next week, and they did a good job. So let's see what you guys thought. Well, you guys really liked Dynamite, so I guess shit works. 54% gave it an A, 34% with a B, 8% with a C, and 5% with a D. All right. So I'm ranking it a little bit lower than you guys. Michael Wayne says this title episode of AEW Dynamite is shitfest line. I was almost tempted to put that in the title of the video. Caleb Jacobs gives it an A+. Tic Tat Tat with an A-. Calvin Bowman with an A+. CC Drink with a B. Biblical Adrian with a B. And Joey Perez gives it a B+. And Nathan Washington with a B-. So good grades for AEW. Fun show. Looking forward to next week. Going to be a big one. Going to be two big ones. Again, Rampage is going to be a 2-hour show next Friday night, which means if you're going to commit to both of them, you're in for a 4-hour show done at midnight. Kind of like a pay-per-view in a way. So let's see. What do we have for next week? Just to recap it real quick. Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson on Dynamite. Also on Dynamite, we got Cody Rhodes versus Malachi Black. I hope Black beats him again, by the way. Don't want to see Cody get his win back. MJF versus Brian Pillman Jr. I would like to see Pillman pick up a surprise win. Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho. Would be a cool feel-good moment for Ruby to win, but my feeling is Britt Baker will retain. FTR versus Sting and Darby Allin. I'm thinking Sting and Darby will pick up the win. And then for Rampage, CM Punk versus Powerhouse Hobbs. I think CM Punk will win that one, pretty clear. Adam Cole and the Young Bucks versus Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express. I'm leaning towards the bad guys winning that one since Cole just debuted not too long ago. And then Chris Jericho and Jake Hager versus Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. I suspect Jericho and Hager will pick up the win on that one. And Gabe sent in a $2 super chat, says, do you think Vince McMahon likes this shit? Some good shit. No, he was probably confused for like 90% of Dynamite this week. I can imagine Vince turning it on and just not knowing what to make of it. And Biblical Adrian says, thoughts on AEW doing 3-hour specials of Dynamite once in a while like WWE used to do before Raw in 2020. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I believe they're going to be doing some special television shows, like quarterly specials, which, you know what? might be fine, to make up for the fact that they only do 4 pay-per-views, but I am also concerned that they're doing too much. I really hope Rampage doesn't become a 2-hour show every week. It's just a lot between Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Rampage. Now, I know a lot of you guys can pick and choose what you watch, but for me, it's kind of tough. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you liked the video, please subscribe if you haven't. Tell a friend, spread the word. Stay tuned. Coming up next on the channel, we got the No DQ review. Going to be a fun one. Big G is coming back. Fresh off of his wedding. He is a married man now. Make sure you guys tune in for that. And I will see you all next time.